Hey everybody, you are now tuned into The Blackout, shining a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on AfroVibes Radio, the #1 online internet radio station with your girl Tequila. Today we have a very special guest, Mr. Ashton P. Woods. Some of you should definitely know him within the Houston community. He's a part of the Black Lives Matter organization. How are you doing this afternoon?
I am doing good. You?
Amazing. Thank you so much for being willing to come on and just share a little bit about your story and all of the great things that you're doing within the community. So just to start off, could you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background?
So, I originally moved here from New Orleans, Louisiana, around the time of Katrina. Mm-hmm. And long story short, in some way, shape, or form, I've been an activist since I was about 15 years old. And that helped to shape and form who I am today in the context of why it is that I feel the need to get out there and fight beside people and for people for the rights that we deserve.
Yeah. And so just to piggyback, I know you said you started out when you were 15, and so I read that you started the Gay Straight Alliance at your New Orleans high school. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it was my freshman year of high school, and basically people were being jerks. People were being, I don't know if I can't cuss, so I'm going to be nice. So basically, to make a long story short, I've always hated people who takes advantage of other people, and I hate people who are lazy. Not as in hate, as in I want to hurt them, but as in you don't need to be in this space if you're going to be creating a rift for people. Mm-hmm. So at the time, I was questioning my own sexual orientation and doing self-discovery. And I decided to, once I heard there were other students who felt like I did, work with them to start the Student Alliance for Equality, which we use as an acronym for SAFE. So we were called the SAFE Club. Mm-hmm. And that moment basically is what caused everything that you see today in me. It caused me to get put out when I was growing up, so I was homeless at 15, 16. Had luckily found some friends. If you ever watch Pose, there's some similarities to that. So the little dancer boy, I very much so identify with him.
So how was that growing up, not only realizing that you had to figure out what your sexual orientation was, but also being a black man in a society, which we notice today a lot of young black men are losing their lives to police brutality and just, black on black crime, just so many different things that's taking a black man out the household.
Well, so here's the thing. So I study sociology. I'm a student. I'm about to graduate soon. And believe it or not, what they teach white people in social sciences is this. It's that black on black crime is actually not a thing. It's called intraracial crime, and it's on par with any other race out there. But the bigger issue is the inherent internalized and external white supremacy that we have to deal with in all of its forms. So it ain't just police killing us, it's the system teaching us that we ain't gonna be nothing and that we ain't gonna amount to nothing, and basically in a nutshell that's a self-fulfilling prophecy that's being instilled in us. So I would say, when I ask people all the time, I said, listen, have you ever been called a fag and a nigger in the same sentence by two different people? One white, one black. Who's calling who what? I've been called a nigger by a white person and a fag by a black person. So it's a question of one's blackness. One, when you come out as something that other folks deem as deviant, in my case, a homosexual. And in many cases, what you also find is that we're dealing with white folk and black folks' respectability politics to appease to the white folk to get the crumbs that we get by working 3 times harder than they do for only a fraction of the benefit, right? So that's what I think about when it applies to black men, not just the police, but the institutional racism and finance and government in general, where we move from they're the guys that are going to rape your wives and get high on marijuana and do all these other things from the 1920s, 30s with the BDIs and stuff, to we're thugs, we're aggressive, we're angry. But you can't tell an oppressed people how to respond for being oppressed.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing I've been noticing about black men and black women, to be honest with you, is that we express ourselves and then we're deemed too aggressive. Yeah. And we're told, well, you need to be nice even though you're the one getting screwed over. And the sensitivity to that for me is amped up because not only am I pro-black, I'm not going to forsake someone who looks like me because they're a homophobe, but that don't mean I'm not going to cuss them out. You know what I mean? It's like taking care of home while making sure the external things that are pushing up against us are being pushed back.
Yeah. Now, personally, I know I have some friends. They are a part of the LGBTQT community, and they're black. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times I find that they almost don't even believe that we're still fighting some type of social injustice because they don't particularly deal with it themselves, but they feel like they have more issues when they're just trying to battle with their sexual orientation.
Yeah.
How do you feel when you see somebody that places the activism on the LGBTQT community versus the black community, when understanding being black is the first thing that someone sees about you before they see your sexual orientation?
Well, here's the thing. I think people have been taught the wrong thing. All behaviors are learned behaviors, right? So we're taught that we have a right to question the existence of someone, as opposed to seeing someone in the same boat as us in terms of marginalization. So there are a lot of people in Houston as a prime example, regardless of what race you are, people here, either you're poor or you're not. And there are some extremely comfortable people of color, including black people here. We thrive here in Houston for the most part in a lot of ways, and in a lot of ways we don't. There's still poverty here, abject poverty. But I think one of the things is that it's a bubble. In that bubble, until that bubble bursts, meaning you ain't gonna say nothing until it happens to you. Yeah. You're not gonna be mad about it until it happens to you or someone close to you. And it stems back from that I got mine, you get yours mentality. I'm leaving this neighborhood and I'm never looking back, but I'm gonna come and go to church every Sunday and get mad that they're closing all my favorite spots down, but you moved to Sugarlands, sis, bro. And I'm not trying to guilt you for being comfortable. You worked hard for that. But remember, if you take your funds and you put it into a county where it's literally white and the people legislate bigotry, but you comfortable in your 4-bedroom house and with your 3 bedrooms, your 3 bathrooms, and your 2-car garage. There's nothing wrong with that. But remember, every time you take financial means from neighborhoods where we grew up, gentrification is almost sure to come behind it. So I'm saying all that to say, when we talk about people like that who feel like that there's no oppression, it's because, one, respectability politics, and number 2, there's this thing called white gaze, Gaze, white gaze. And it's, if we do everything the way white folks do them, we'll be okay. If we do everything and view everything through a white lens, we'll be okay. But there's a problem with that. You still black. And you will find out real hard, real fast, that you cannot hide behind your funds and your comfort. And that there was a time, not that long ago, when people were talking about marriage equality was for white folk, when they was forgetting that there were black folk like me who had witnessed friends that broke wills. And people didn't understand that the state literally made the Defense of Marriage Act on the state level and the federal level means that you don't recognize the existence of a couple, period. So in Texas, if you were a male and I was your partner and we bought a house together and I willed it to you, the state of Texas says that is null and void, and my estranged mother could come from 300 miles away and say, I don't know him, this is my stuff, and put my partner out after we worked to build that stuff. That's why this was important. There are so many black folk, black women, black men who have been cast aside and who have been facing homelessness until we got the right to marry, because everybody thought it was white because it was a white face. And there's always a white face on everything. And that's the problem within the LGBTQ community. Everybody's scared to address the fact that you can still be white, gay, and racist. You still white, you still have privilege, and you still gay. It don't absolve you of any of that. And you need to be held accountable for it. One, and number 2, to the black folk who feel like they don't have to address that, the coonery of it all, sounds like it's either we as a people are going to let them burn with the white folk when society finally wakes up and realizes that it's the black people who should be on top and not the white folk, or
I hope you're getting there.
It's one of those things.
Yeah. And I want to ask you about, you use the word black liberation and intersectional justice on your website a lot. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of give us a definition behind both of those terminologies?
So I'm gonna say it like this. I'm not gonna define it. I'm gonna give you an example of black liberation. A black kid gets to go and play in the park with whatever toy he or she has in her hand or his hand without the risk of police pulling up on them and shooting them at 12 years old. Being able to live. We spend a lot of time in the black community looking at children as people who perform functions and work for us, as opposed to growing up and developing an independent mind and a sense of self, to where they can go and be productive for themselves and not just you. We've been raising our kids to clean our house and wash our dishes and stuff, but we're not teaching them how to survive outside the house, outside of that, right? And that's the thing that we need to talk about. It ain't just about putting black families back together. It's more about what are we teaching our children, right? Regardless of who the parent is or who's raising the child. So it really, black liberation is to be able to be free and be whoever you are, without people, one, questioning your blackness, saying that if you do this, you lose some of your black identity. Because people do that all the time, right? And then number two, it's about the fact that we have access to things, but we don't. If people actually were politically engaged, it would require people to have the things that they need. So if people are not worrying about dividing their funds between the cell phone bill, bus fare, and food from the minimum wage job, then if that was taken care of, if those things were not a worry, do you think that we will be in the political situations that we are in now? Because people are too distracted by their own needs. And if we don't meet the needs of the people, we won't meet the needs of anything. And we won't be able to, we'll be continuing to having to define black liberation.
Yeah, and I was going to say, with you defining it, it comes off as such a positive thing. But what I don't understand is how the European or the Caucasian society, they misconstrued what black liberation is as though it's an extremist organization.
Well, the problem with that is this. Who gives a damn about what the white people think? We're not doing this for their approval, for their comfort, for their fragility, for none of it. We're saying, when we say Black Lives Matter, that we're teaching black people that Black Lives Matter. It is not about the approval of white folk. We don't need their permission. And their opinion is not wanted or needed. I could care less. Yes. Yeah, they are everywhere. They're on TV, they're on the radio. Everywhere you go, you're seeing them. They're like roaches. They got enough space. We don't need to give them any credence.
And what about intersectional justice?
Intersectionality is talking about, and I brought it up several times under guys, but intersectionality is, and I think about Kimberly Crenshaw when I say it all the time, and I've met her quite a few times. She's a beautiful woman inside of me. And what intersectionality really was meant for was for black women. But as time has gone on, we talked about it as all-encompassing of black folk. Because I know a lot of white folk and non-black folk who are people of color like to use it, but it's really about us. It was something that was coined for us to say, listen, we can be black and a woman, or black and a man, black and. I'm not just black, but these are the things that you don't see when you see my blackness, but I can be this and that. I can like rock music, or I can like cooking, right? So intersectional activism is talking about. Somebody said to me one day, well, why don't you just stick to the LGBTQ stuff and leave the race stuff to somebody else? Oh, because the heterosexual people are uncomfortable that a black person with my presentation doesn't look like the traditional stereotype of what a black gay man should be for their comfort? And not to mention the femophobia that comes from that in the first place. Because all black people deserve a right and space to exist without somebody questioning them or looking at them as if they don't belong because they're just a little different. And that's what intersectionality boils down to. I might be this, I might appear this way, but look at my talents. Look at what I can do.
And lastly, we have to go to a commercial break really quickly, but you are a part of the American Humanist Alliance. Tell us a little bit about
the American Humanist Alliance is about humanism. Humanism, anybody could be a humanist, a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, whoever you are. But I'm an atheist.
Okay, so, explain that, because I've seen it. So when you say atheist, what do you mean?
Atheist means I don't believe in God.
At all?
At all.
Whatsoever?
At all.
What about?
And I have a right to that, right?
I mean, spiritually you believe in something, right?
Here's the thing. When we talk about intersectionality, we talk about privilege, right? When we talked about, and I mentioned privilege a few times, we think about privilege in context of male privilege, white privilege, And maybe if you're not disabled, you might have something called ableism, where you might not have any disabilities, but you're not thinking or taking into account to somebody who may be in a wheelchair, deaf, or may not be able to walk really fast, right? So when you think about privilege is having a predominant society that calls themselves Christians in spite of over 1,000 religions existing, and acting as if that was the only thing that existed before 2,000 years prior. Right. So the thing about it is this: I believe humanism, belief in humanity, that humanity can do the good, do the right thing, and be cool and exist. Right. Whereas atheism, on my part, is strictly a disbelief in Christian God. I never said that God didn't exist. Okay. Right. I never said any of that. I'm not here to refute that. Okay. It's not for me. But I think the level of coexistence that we have to have, because as an atheist, a lot of people tell me, and I gracefully accept it. This is my ministry, because the way I speak and what I speak on and what we talk about and other people talk about, is still rooted in right from wrong. And a lot of people ask, well, if you don't believe, where do you get your sense from right and wrong? Well, my mama whooped my ass when I did something wrong, so I just kind of had positive and negative reinforcement, just like you. Yeah. She wouldn't beat me upside the head with some Bible. It was just a matter of, if you do this is wrong. These are the consequences. If you do this is good. These are the consequences. Consequences can be good or bad. But we got to break out of, this whole theme of, if you're black, you're this, right? Because to be a Christian, technically, and I have to tell this to someone, because a lot of my friends go to seminary, and we joke all the time that Christians can be atheists. Atheism is a disbelief in a deity. So technically, if you don't believe in Buddhism, or if you don't believe in the Nation of Islam or something like that, you're technically an atheist in the context that you don't necessarily acknowledge that religion existing.
I get that. Well, we have to take a quick commercial break, but when we return, we will continue our conversation with Ashton P. Woods, the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Houston. You guys are listening to The Blackout, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture on AfroVibes Radio with your girl, Tequila. Hey guys, this is Tequila with The Blackout on AfroVibes Radio, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture. We're currently back from the commercial break, and we still are here with the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Houston, Ashton P. Woods. Before we left, you actually had talked a little bit about your blog that you have. I know that it's called The Activist Dispatch, and I wanted to ask you, how has blogging allowed you to use your voice and illustrate the social injustice that happens within the Black community?
Actually, the Activist Dispatch is going to be, it's a website that I'm launching for it to be part Speakers Bureau and to be part activist reporting, meaning that other activists will be able to log on and write blogs about what's going on in the community and about events. Mm-hmm. So it would basically be our own Black-owned media source. Okay. Where if you
have a podcast coming, right?
Yeah. So the real blog is on my site, AshtonPWoods.com, where and also Strength in Numbers, on both of which on my main website, AshtonPWoods.com, is basically about a higher level of a snapshot of how national things affect local people, and how if I'm helping someone, I will release a video via the blog and share it. Because what I've noticed is with the blogs, Facebook can't ban you for 30 days, right? White people and Black people and other folk can't shut you up. What they can do is they can either read it or click away, but they can't stop other people from seeing it. And that's the power of the internet. And I encourage people to guest post on my blog and to start their own blogs, because the more people out there that are saying what needs to be said on their own terms, without censorship and without feeling like there's going to be some type of repercussion or some type of social media ban or whatever. Mm-hmm. You can say it, you can write it, and walk away. You say what you said, it is what it is, right? And I learned that because when I first got really active here in Houston, there are a lot of things that I've noticed that involve some serious respectability politics. Dress this way, speak that way, walk this way, talk that way, in order for you to get what you want. But here's the thing though, the power structure in Houston is Black and brown. The majority of the elected officials in Houston are black and brown. So, are we talking about self-internalized white supremacy? Are we talking about LGBTQ issues? Are we talking about women's rights? Are we talking about any of those things? Yes, via a blog. And that's what it's for.
Amazing. That's really, really, really good. And I also wanted to ask you in regards to how did you become the co-founder of Black Lives Matter Houston?
Okay, so the long of the short is we started as Black Lives Matter Texas. Quite a few friends who either had to leave and some actually passed away helped to found BLM Texas in Ferguson. And once chapters started popping up, we basically changed the name to BLM Houston. And for a little bit, because everybody went their own way, life, college, school, I literally ran BLM Houston by myself and partnered with other groups and organizations, and that's what I did as an individual activist, right? Not just with BLM Houston, but partnering as an individual and with BLM Houston as well to work with other groups to get things done and maximize effect. But now, for quite some time, we've had a team of about 8 people with a team-based structure, and we respond. Whether it be Harvey or police brutality incident or even electoral politics, we're involved in it all. We've been involved in the Sandra Bland Act. So the bigger question is why, not how. Why did I become part of this? It was always a thing growing up in New Orleans. I used to always hear black women tell their children in the early 90s, don't talk like that around the white people. Or my uncle who had a nice car and would leave it in his driveway and take the Silverado to work that he goes fishing in, so they can't see what he got, so they can't take it from him. That's why. How
has social media and its platform allowed you guys to make a bigger difference compared to the civil rights movement back in the 50s and the 60s?
Actually, it's the same format. It's just with digital communication.
Do you think it's allowed people? Because a lot of people say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that happened." Well, it's always been happening. Yeah. Now you can visually see
right,
it.
It's just visible.
Yeah.
So what we do is shine like everybody else. We shine lights on things. Sometimes it's non-traditional. Sometimes it's out of allyship. Sometimes it's specifically about black folk. Most of the time, it's particularly and specifically about black folk. And a lot of times, in identifying marginalization, you come to find underlying factors, and a lot of times to fix one big problem, we gotta fix like 18 little problems. And what we're tasked with is making sure that we have people around us that are able to address things all at once and send out an all-out attack. Like for example, we partnered with several groups and got HISD to reconsider closing 10 black and brown schools, and they didn't close them schools. So that's what it's about.
Amazing. And one other thing, so I know your website, the organization says that you guys help to build a healthy, educated, and financially stable black community in Houston. What are some of the things that you guys are contributing to help change those things or reverse, a lot of setbacks that we have?
Well, the plan, and I can't go into too much detail because somebody white might be listening.
I got you.
Or Coon, who loves white people.
I always say you can't take everybody with you. I always say
At all.
Don't believe me? Read the Nat Turner story. His own.
At all. So, the biggest thing is to, in a nutshell, we want to fill the gaps.
Okay.
We want to take part Black Panther, part other things that I've seen growing up and consult with the community and come up with a plan to where we are in every black area of the city and can mobilize at any time. Now, how we going to do that, I can't go into detail. But we want to be able to feed people, and at a certain point, we want to get to the point where we're providing rental assistance, where we are, if we have to do it ourselves, opening grocery stores in the neighborhoods where they won't go for tax subsidies and all these other things. And one of the biggest things that we all should be doing, and one of the things that I'll let out, is I really want to start a program, personally, not with BLM Houston, but to have a fund that's like a bail fund, but find out who is black in the black neighborhoods that are going into foreclosure or going under, and paying the houses out for them and giving them that deed, so that the county can't take it from them. Because there's no way somebody should lose a house that's worth $150,000 for a $2,000 tax lien. No way.
That's amazing. And also, have you worked with any of the people that are incarcerated within the Houston area?
Some of my teammates are. We all are doing something.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, but in a nutshell, yes.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, yes. But I would say that when we talk about incarceration, we're talking about how HIV/AIDS is treated, how people are physically treated, and one of the bigger things in our involvement, it happens to stem to the Sandra Bland Act. When I was there with Governor Coleman, who invited me to be a part of the process, in BLM Houston to be a part of the process to get this bill passed, and it did, and it changed how prisons are operated at prisons and jails are operated in the state of Texas. Cameras everywhere, that type of thing. I'm also a co-chair on the NA's 2020 campaign with Legacy and a few other groups as an individual activist. I'm the criminal justice co-chair, and we literally came up with a plan to eradicate HIV infections within the prison system, and a larger plan to eradicate HIV infections or reduce them within the city of Houston by 2020, and it's working. So we're talking about making sure people get their medications while incarcerated, that they're being seeing a doctor, and that that people are being tested. Because right now, what you see in most places is, and then they'll tell you this, is that most HIV testing, if you're going to jail or depending on your physician, is opt-in. And the difference between opting in and opting out, meaning you have to ask for the HIV test. The doctor's not going to tell you that you could take it. So there's a push for opt-out testing, meaning that that they do it automatically unless you say you don't want it. Things like that.
Wow. And lastly, since you did mention Sandra Bland, that was my last question I wanted to ask you. I did go to Prairie View with her. We were in band together. She's actually a friend of mine, so that's actually how I started. Yeah, that's how I actually got into all of this, because I never had anybody that close to me that was affected by something like that.
I was with her sister yesterday.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Waller on Sandra Bland Parkway and did a balloon release.
Yeah, I was about to say her anniversary just passed. I think that was this Friday, right?
Yeah.
So, I know the act has been coming in place, and I'm really glad to hear that. But I wanted to say, with the anniversary, I know that there's still a lot of things that have to be changed, right? There's still a lot of police brutality taking place, a lot of lives being taken. And what do you think the solution is to pushing forward so we can really crack down on the police enforcement?
The lesson that I learned from the Sandra Bland murder is this. When we found out, I had just got to Phoenix in that Roots in 2015. And I was a part of the group that planned the disruption of Bernie Sanders that week that she was murdered. I don't know if you remember when it was all over the news and we shut them down at that conference.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden the candidates had policy platform changes for social justice. I think it's an all of the above strategy. And I brought it up because we thought that even though it did change the way her death has literally changed the way things are done in this country and in this state in so many different ways, whether it's a presidential candidate or if it's a state law, right? Yeah. And what I've noticed is that you can do those things, but you gotta have people. Somebody gotta fry the fries, somebody gotta make sure the oil hot, somebody gotta peel the potatoes, somebody gotta wash the dishes, clean the knives and all that stuff. I'm saying that to say, all of the above strategies require people who, like me and others, who can walk the state capitol halls and get bills pushed or to kill bills, while someone is on the ground educating people about how to get to where they need to get to and who to be pissed off at to get there. I think that in addressing police brutality, we got to talk about how we reward police officers or law enforcement in general, regardless of what level they're at, as heroes because they volunteered to get a paycheck. One. And number two, the problem I have is if you have less than a month of training on weapons and you become a police officer and you're a rookie and you're trigger happy and you from places like, I don't know, Atascocita driving into Houston with a Confederate flag on the back of your truck, we gotta watch that kind of thing. So you think about implicit bias training, body cameras, you think about community education, advocacy. It's an all of the above strategy. And if we don't do it all at the same time, a lot of the efforts that we make, like what we did in 2015, can fail. Because I feel like what came of that is we had some successes, but we've also had some system failure. And the system failure is the concern that I have, meaning the disconnect between getting things legislated and how people actually feel on the ground and the needs that are being met. right? Because if you walk in your neighborhood and you've been in your neighborhood all this time, and you know not to be certain places at a certain time because you know the popo's gonna be out there, you know, harassing people, that's a bad thing. So we're talking about not community-based policing, but we're talking about, like, for example, HPD coming to us, the black community, not Black Lives Matter Houston, but the community. We do work for the community. We don't speak for the community. Let's get that straight, right? We can't speak. Anybody can speak for themselves. So, but to make the long story short, is making sure that we hold not just the police accountable, but the people who enable them. Yeah. All of the above. You gotta hold the enablers accountable and let them see that what they're enabling is hurting people who look like them or don't look like them.
And I brought that up because I know Antoine Rose, the 17-year-old who was just shot in the back by police, that was just recent. That's why I said we have so far to go. I'm not sure what's gonna happen, how we can tear down the infrastructure, or if we got to take it back to the Black Panther era where we start policing our own black community and not being afraid. Because the other day somebody told me the revolution requires...
That's what gangs were at one point, right?
Yeah, the revolution requires that some people will get caught in the crossfire, but that's just what happened. So, but I thank you so much for all that you're doing with Black Lives Matter in the Houston area, and I just really hope that you continue to thrive and be successful, because you're fighting on just not, you know, the community here, but for all over the world, people across the African diaspora. So thank you so much. Again, we had the amazing, and I'm just so glad he came. Y'all don't want to know what happened this morning. But I'm so grateful for him being here. Thank you, Mr. Ashton Woods. Thank you. Again, you guys have been tuned in to The Blackout on AfroVibes Radio, where we shine a light on Black excellence, activism, and culture with your girl, Tequila. Make sure to check out our Facebook and Instagram pages at The Blackout AVR. And to stay up to date on previous discussions and future events, please visit AfroVibes Facebook and Instagram at AfroVibes Radio, Twitter at AfroVibes Radio with an S. And lastly, you can listen to us online at www.afrovibesradio.com or simply download the AfroVibes Radio app on the Apple or Google Play Store.